right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Reston Recovery Podcast. With me is Mr. Trevor Wittwer. He is a former professional athlete, software company founder that we'll get into, multi-gym owner, and probably the most important jobs out there is husband of one and dad of two. But Trevor, welcome to the Reston Recovery Podcast.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me on, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We had an opportunity to meet via the Sleep and Recovery Summit that Nick Lamb put on, and really intrigued on what you're doing company wise. And then, this is the Reston Recovery Podcast, and kind of birthed on my own life balance or lack thereof. It'd be interested to get your insights on how you do that with a young family and multi businesses. But what's your kind of Genesis 1-1 story? I see you were a professional athlete. So how'd you get in that?
Yeah. So, I've always been in the performance world. And so, I went to school, played basketball in college, small school in Minnesota. Was fortunate to grow a lot when I got to college. So I went to college at like 6'2", maybe 6'3", maybe like $160. And after my freshman year was about 6'5.5", and 190, 195. So had a really good college career, was always into performance, did the exercise science degree thing, really mainly for my own thing. Like I wanted to get like every ounce of performance I could out of my basketball career, but was a lifelong athlete. And so really loved the field of exercise science and performance. And recovery was a piece of that. Nutrition was a big piece of that. So it was kind of in that world, studying all that stuff. For anyone listening, like the T Nation of the world, like reading articles there, getting started with Precision Nutrition when they were a brand new company, and doing all that. And so I was fortunate to have a good enough college career that I went into Germany and played 3 years professionally there in kind of northwestern Germany. So
awesome.
Got to spend a little time in another country. And then in my off season, which is typically the summer, I would come home and then I'd be training people in the off season. So just kind of started building a little bit of a business, but I'd always go back the next year. And then after my third year, I had a contract, actually a really good contract that I was excited about, ended up falling through. It was really late. It was probably like late August when they pulled the plug on it. And for people that aren't familiar with like the European system, typically teams can only have a couple foreign players. And so they have to be very selective of who those foreign players are. Okay. So what happened in my scenario was a big guy got hurt. And so instead of taking a guard as a foreign player, they had to go find a big guy as a foreign player because they needed to fill that role. So it's pretty cutthroat. So it's like, you're out. And it was pretty late in the year. So I wasn't super excited about trying to kind of find that next team. And I'd kind of seen the writing on the wall, and I'm like, you know what? I've seen guys that have been doing this for 10 years and I kind of see what their life is like. And I don't necessarily know. I don't want to be in that situation 10 years from now. And I'm ready to start that next career. So at that time I had a handful of training clients that I was training, and we're like, all right, let's just keep this thing going and let's see what happens. So I was training people out of a local community center, anywhere. We were in like a broom closet for a while, like training people in the hallway, like we were on basketball courts. I didn't have any money at the time. And so like I would have all my clients buy their bands. So we had these big, like 41-inch circular bands, like red ones, black ones, purple ones. And the clients would buy a band package. And if they bought a band package, then I would train them. So that's kind of how we did it. And it was during like the boot camp world too, where boot camps were like all the rage. Yeah. And so we were doing the boot camp thing out on the basketball courts, training people, and just, was doing a good job. So I started getting more and more clients and getting more and more clients. And I was like substitute teaching at the time and just doing like random things to help kind of pay some bills. And eventually the clientele got big enough where we're like, okay, I don't want to train here anymore. I actually want a gym, and I want more toys, and I want like a space that we can really train people in. So we ended up the numbers started to work. So I've always been kind of on top of my numbers from the beginning of like, okay, where are we at financially? Do we have the ability to move somewhere else? So we bought a building and then renovated it and then moved our client base into that building. And then kind of long story short, we built out that building. So it's like a 6,000 square foot gym now, where it's kind of our main facility where we do all of our personal training, our group training, athletic development. And then since there, we've expanded into 3 more facilities.
Oh, wow.
Some in the same coaching model, other ones are in a 24-hour model that we're adding a coaching component to. And so we've kind of expanded out into that. And so from that, from our facility, we were training a lot of like just kind of like every day. We call them everyday Gen Pop. So interested in losing some fat, maybe gaining a little muscle, just want to be able to like run around with their kids, want to age gracefully, all of those kind of things. Those are our bread and butter for people. And so we then were like, okay, we're serving these people in the facility with the fitness aspect, but we're not really doing much outside of the facility, because we know that fitness is important, but we also know that like nutrition and lifestyle behaviors and sleep and recovery and stress management, all those things are important too, but we don't really have a good way to serve them in that respect.
Right. That
So
in between, right? When you see them every Tuesday and Thursday, and what's
yeah.
happening in between those days.
And I mean, honestly, a lot of our clients were coming to us for fat loss. And so it's like, okay, awesome. Like I can train you till the cows come home. But if you're not fixing the nutrition aspect or working, improving on the nutrition aspect, it really doesn't matter what we do from a fitness standpoint. We just don't burn that many calories during a fitness session. Unless, I mean, there's a caveat though. I did see a lot of teammates in college. That is maybe one environment where you can out-train a bad diet. A lot of coaches say you can't out-train a bad diet. Go look at collegiate athletes. They can
Yeah.
definitely out-train a bad diet because you're
Yeah.
exercising for 4 hours a day. You can eat whatever you want. And that's
And
also why
kind of age in your corner too.
yeah, exactly. Hormones are in place, like everything is on point, right? And you really don't
Right.
have anything else to worry about. But then you see those athletes when they finish school, they put on 10 pounds in the first 6 months because they continue to eat at a way that they did when they were exercising for 4 hours a day. And now they maybe make it to the gym, a day a week, a couple of days a week because they're so burned out from, playing sport their entire life.
Right.
But so yeah, so we're serving these people in the fitness realm really, really well, but we're not doing well outside of that. And so that's actually where the idea and the impetus for the software came to play, is because we can't hire more people to coach these people outside, but we felt like we could leverage technology to help them be successful. And at the time in the market in the technology world was very heavy towards workouts. So everything in the market was like developing workouts. How do we develop a better workout builder so you can work with a client outside of the facility and they have all their exercises and their sets and the reps and their videos and all of that? Well, we're like, we don't really need the workout thing. We're doing the workout thing. What we need is like the behavior change thing. And so I'm pretty deep in the behavior change world. I've done a bunch of training on motivational interviewing. I've done a bunch of training in nutrition with like precision nutrition and that kind of stuff. And so we're like, we need a kind of more of a behavior change model rather than like just here's your workout outside of the facility.
Right.
We looked around and there really wasn't anything on the market that really served our purpose. So I had a buddy, Kane, who was in Madison, Wisconsin at the time, and he had a very similar facility there. And we would collaborate on like, hey, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do better? And finally, we just like, we need to create this because it doesn't exist in the market right now. And so we went down that realm of trying to build a software company, which is much different. Well, there's similarities, but much different than building a gym. And that's kind of 7 years forward. And, here we are.
So did you have a tech background at all, or it was...
No tech background at all. Both of us, we kind of are of the mindset, like, we'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
So kind of funny story there. When we first launched it, like we didn't have a lot of money, right? We had enough, profit and money from our facilities and our businesses that we could, give this thing a little bit of legs right away, but it wasn't like we were sitting on like $500,000 of cash, or we didn't go out to we didn't go raise money. So we didn't have $1 million or $2 million of investor capital that we could then go build this thing. It was like, okay, we've got $20,000. Like, what can we do with $20,000?
Right.
So right away, funny story. Kane lives in Madison, Wisconsin. And so the University of University of Wisconsin, Madison is there. And great school, great football games. And so he actually approached their computer science department, and they had like a computer science club. And we basically pitched them this idea of like, hey, we've got this idea for a product. Do you think you guys could build it? And then obviously they said, yes, well, we can build it. Sure. And they were going to do it for like a few grand. And we're like, oh, okay, awesome. Like, let's do it for $2,000. 6 months later, like we don't have any product, like, because it's students, right? So like this is just like their side gig. It's a club. And then kids come in and out of the club, and there was maybe a little bit done, but nothing at all. So really, I mean, we didn't waste a lot of money, a little bit of money, but it was really time. We probably wasted 6 to 9 months of time just trying to get these students to build this thing. Then we were like, all right, we don't have a tech background, so we need to go. There's these things called dev shops. So you can go to a dev shop that has developers on staff, has designers on staff, has everyone on staff, and basically companies come to them with ideas and then they build it for them.
Okay.
And so we came to them with like, we call it an MVP, minimal viable product. What's the smallest thing we need in order to get this into the market to see if it has legs? Like, does this have any traction or not? Like, we know we need it. We feel like it would be valuable for our business, but if we want to turn this into a business, we need hundreds, thousands of other people to also like value this thing.
Right.
And so, yeah, so when we first started, it was super simple. It was a lesson every day, and there was an action every day. Those were like the two things. So basically, what are we working on? Let's call it like protein. Cool. What's that action going to be? Maybe it's eat lean protein with every meal, right? And then there's going to be a lesson every day about protein. And it was just like the sequential. We started with this habit, and we moved to this habit, and then we moved to this habit, and then we moved to this habit. And it was very just sequential. You built your 12 habit program, and then you deployed it to clients. And the magic of it was it gave us better information as coaches. Like that's
How
really
so?
like the secret. Because what happens, like, let's say I'm coaching you, right? You and I sit down and we have a conversation. Okay. We go through it. We figure out where your obstacles are. And by the time we get done with that meeting, we're going to decide, really, you're going to decide on what's the thing you're going to work on for the next 14 days, right? Maybe it's cool. Water comes down to it. We kind of go back and forth. We figure that 2 liters of water is the amount that you feel like you can execute at a 90% clip. Like 9 out of 10 days, you're going to be able to get it in, no problem. Cool. Awesome. You're going to leave, right? You're going to go away. You're going to go into your own world. You're going to get busy, right? And the only way for me to really keep you on track is manual follow-up. So I need to be sending text messages. I need to send emails to kind of keep it top of mind for you, because it's a new behavior for you. And so you need more prompts in order to adopt this new behavior.
Right.
But then I also need to know if you're starting to struggle, because what happens is you're going to go away, you're going to get busy, the dog's going to puke on the carpet, the kid's going to be up all night, like life just gets in the way, right? And it's just super normal.
Yeah.
And so we're going to come back and meet in 14 days, and you're going to be like, Trevor, man, the dog puked on the carpet, the kid's been up all night, I completely forgot about this thing, and you know what, I didn't do it, I maybe got it in twice. Okay, awesome. We just wasted 2 weeks, right? But had I known as a coach that you had a couple days where you were really struggling, I could have intervened and we could have strategized and we could have figured out how to get you back on track. Because most people are going to be like, most people are all or nothing. Like, if this is the task I'm supposed to do, let's say it's drink 2 liters of water. If I can't drink 2 liters, I'm not going to drink any at all.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And so it's just all or nothing. And so part of the coaching process is helping someone kind of overcome that mindset and come up with a strategy so that they can be successful. Because one thing I think is really important in the coaching process is this idea of momentum. And so momentum can be very small, but momentum is just being successful, right? When you're successful, you create confidence, right? And we can't create confidence, we're going to be more successful. And it's this kind of like perpetual wheel that gets going, right? Then we see more success, and then we feel like we can do more. And then we can start to make more harder because our competence has went up and our confidence has went up, and we can start to build these really, really, really cool behaviors or habits or whatever. But what happens to most people is they try and bite off too much right away. And we see this with clients all the time. The clients will come into me, hey, I want to work out 7 days a week. Awesome. We're going to start with 2, right? Because like 7 days a week, you're going to do that for like 2 weeks, but then you're going to like, something's going to come up and it's not going to work. I'd rather start at 2.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like that New Year's resolution syndrome, right?
Yeah.
You coming in hot
and that's just us as humans and understanding our own behavior, right? We get really motivated and then we want to just take everything in, where it's like, okay, let's just find success, even if it's small. And then we can build on success because you're going to build competency, you're going to build confidence, and then we can make it a little bit harder because your skill is a little bit better. And then we can make it a little bit harder because your skill is a little bit better, right? And it's like the same thing with like learning, right? We don't go right to calculus. We learn subtraction, we learn addition, we learn multiplication, we learn algebra, and then we get there. It's kind of a similar thing with behavior change, right? Start with something that you can execute consistently, get good at it, and then make it a little bit harder. And now 6 months, it's a longer process, which I think is hard for people. But 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, you're going to be doing something completely different and having a profound effect on your health, on your well-being, on whatever. And I think too many people just try to go to the finish line right at the beginning. And then because they aren't able to maintain that level, then they just go back. And then we play this like back and forth and back and forth. And we don't actually make any steps forward because it's all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And so how do you work through, because to your point, it's the human condition that we all do of we go all in and get excited for the
Mhm.
thing, come in too hot, for whatever reason. We don't know our bodies yet, or just what have you. How do you reframe that to help them slow it down to understand that, that consistency is greater than, running 1 mile a day is better than 7 on Saturday
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So we have an analogy we use with our clients. So a lot of people say the wagon, right? So I'm either on the wagon or I'm off of the wagon, right? Which insinuates that there's an on switch or there's an off switch. I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it, which is like, that's not really always the case, right? That's why you're just staying in the same spot. And so we like the idea of a dial, right? So a dial, let's call it from 1 to 10. Sometimes during your life, when life makes sense, right, you can be dialed up to a 7 or 8. You can be all in, you can be getting after it. We can be making leaps, right? But then other times during your life, it needs to be dialed down to maybe like a 3 or a 4 because life is a little bit busier. Kids have more things going on, and you just can't be at a 7 or an 8. And so, but the thing is with a dial is we never turn it off,
Mhm.
right? It's not on or it's off. It's just either dialed up or it's dialed down. So we're always taking steps. It's just the size or the magnitude of the steps that we're taking, but we're continuing to move forward or we're continuing to make progress.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
a good example of this is working out, right? There might be a period of your life when you have the ability to get to the gym 5 days a week. Cool. Like, take advantage of that. Do it during that period of time. But then there might be a period of time when you can only get to the gym 2 days a week. Because you're only going 2, does that make it like not as good as 5? Maybe it's not quite as good, but you're not going backwards, right?
Better than
And
zero.
yeah, exactly. And so most people are like, oh, I get to zero, like I don't do anything at all. And so now we train and then we detrain and then we train and then we detrain versus training hard and then training easy, training hard and training easy. And so like what's the minimum? Like what's the minimum that you need that you can execute even if life is like a complete show? Like
Mhm.
what's the minimum that you can do? Okay, that's your 3 or 4 on your dial. Right. And then if life is perfect and everything aligns, like what's your maximum? What can you do? Cool. We're probably going to be somewhere in there. And it's just going to determine what else is going on in our life. Right. So we never turn it off. We just dial it up or dial it down. Nutrition works the same way. Sometimes we're going to be really on point with our nutrition and we're going to be eating super clean and we're getting protein with every meal. And then sometimes we're on vacation. Right. And so like then we might have a few more drinks, but we still might try and get our vegetables in and get protein with our meals. And so like we're not dialing it off. We're not just going to go like eat whatever we want, right?
Right.
And hit the buffet. We're still conscious about it, but we're just dialing it down. We're not quite as on point. And yeah, maybe our body composition goes in the wrong way a little bit, right? But we're not having to like come back and then fight our way out of that hole every single time. And
Yeah.
so, and I think when people start to get that concept, it then becomes more of like a lifestyle. Like we start to identify like, hey, this is who I am. I'm a person that works out. I'm a person that's fit. And so what does a fit person do? They get some movement in. Even if they
Yeah.
can't get to the weight room, they're on the beach, they go for walks and they stay active. So I think it's really a mindset shift at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think the mindset plays such a critical role throughout all that, and that self narrative, right, in all of that you're talking to, how to get through um, that absolutes versus degrees kind of conversation that you're talking about, and being okay with that, and not like heaping on some kind of self negative. Oh, I didn't go to the gym 5 days this week, so
Right.
now it's like I suck. And that
Mm-hmm.
seems like, I think maybe it's just me, a lot of that conversation for whoever it is, even the folks that are more consistent than others, we have that negative narrative that goes into it.
Right. And I think that's when you think about it as black and white, where this is what I have to hit in order for me to be successful versus a range, then we have a little more negativity, right? Because it's like, oh, I didn't hit that. Okay, I suck, or I need to do better, or whatever. But it's like, can we just hit this range, right? And sometimes we're going to be at the top of the range, sometimes we're at the bottom, but what's that minimum that we can hit? And honestly, like the best thing, like there's a few things that we can do to engineer this so we don't have to like consciously think about it, right? The first one is we call it collaboration, call it a friend, call it accountability, whatever, right? I think that's why hiring a coach is one of the best things anyone can do, because there's an accountability built in,
Yeah.
which is good. And I think a coach helps create the path or show you the path, the fastest way to get from A to Z, right?
Right.
But did I freeze, or are you still, can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. We'll keep going. It just looks like my video froze. That's all right.
Yep.
So we've got this like accountability, right, with your coach. Which coach is really like a guide. They're like, okay, I've seen this before. I know how to get from A to Z, and here's the path to get from A to Z. Cool. What I think makes this really sticky and makes it really powerful is a peer that is on a similar journey with you.
Yeah.
That kind of peer accountability. And so this is one of the best things I've ever done as far as being consistent with my workouts. Is I asked a buddy, I'm like, hey, do you want to work out together? Cool. What time are we going to work out? Awesome. It's 8 a.m. right now. And it works with both of our schedules. So
Yep.
every day from Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on my schedule is blocked off an hour for a workout. And it's the same thing on my buddy's schedule. And so what happens is we show up to workouts more frequently because we know the other guy is probably going to be there. It's scheduled on the calendar. And now I've tied a workout with a social aspect where I like hanging out with this guy. I like
The
just,
interaction.
he's another business owner, right? And so we
Yeah.
get to kind of talk shop a little bit during this time. And it just makes it a really fun and cool environment. And I like working out too, but like this makes it even better. And so our consistency has just been through the roof.
Yeah.
And then if we can't make 8 a.m., we'll communicate, hey, can we go at 3? Can we do this? And if we can't, no big deal. We go on our own. But if we can, we switch it. And so it's just a way to really structure that so that like we're just being more consistent, right? So it's not just about working out.
Yeah, that's a great point, in engaging your community. I mean, we're relational beings, so I think it makes sense. And I've experienced that recently too, as somebody who had been working out with a friend up the road. He's got a gym in his garage.
Yep.
And that everything you just described is what's been going back and forth. And even if we're not meeting up for like a week or two, we know we're back and forth communicating, at least engaging each other, saying, hey, how'd it go? And so if you're going solo, you're at least going solo. And the other thing I observed, for me, I'm a runner. I enjoy running, but I noticed the burden is lighter when you're doing it with somebody than when you're doing it by yourself. The weight just feels lighter. For me, the run feels faster. And I even noticed that for like my pacing and whatnot, is I'm talking with my friend the whole time and realizing I'm going 30 seconds faster than I had been when I was by myself. So it just makes the whole experience not this big drudgery.
Right. I mean, at our core, right, we're social beings.
Mhm.
Like that's just a part of who we are. We know loneliness is one of like the biggest predictors of death as people start getting older, right? It's a real issue. And so we're social by nature. And so the more you can make the things you want to do or the things you know you should be doing social, right? That's why like people's peer groups are so important, right? If you hang out, you always hear it with like the money thing, like you are the net of like the 5 people that you hang out with or whatever, right? I mean, the same thing matters from like a fitness and nutrition or a health standpoint. Like if all your buddies want to drink beer on Friday night and like that's their thing, right? You're probably going to drink beer on Friday night and you're probably going to gain some weight and be part of that lifestyle, right? But if your buddies are like, hey, we're going to get up Saturday morning, we're going to do a ruck together, and we're going to hang out, we're going to work out throughout the week, like you're probably going to be in a different state health-wise than something else, right? And so I think that social piece is so huge. And then the second thing that I think is critical is your environment. And this kind of is like, that's a social environment, but also our physical environment, I think is massive, absolutely massive. And we deal with this with nutrition all the time with our clients, right? This is one of the first principles that we try. It's really hard, but we try to get them to employ is clean up your environment. If you don't have like the foods in your house that you don't want to consume on a regular basis, you're not going to consume them very much. Our methodology with our clients is very much like nothing is good or bad. Okay, some things are going to move you closer to your goals, some things are going to move you away. But there's nothing that's inherently good or bad. It's the things that we do repetitively that are the things we want to optimize. And so if you find yourself eating ice cream every night, cool. The simplest thing you can do is just remove the ice cream from your house. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have ice cream or can never have ice cream. It just means that you have to leave your environment to go get it.
Right.
You want ice cream? Cool. Go down the street to the ice cream shop, have your ice cream, and then come back. Right. And so it's not like ice cream is bad. It's just I have to leave. And now as humans, we're typically follow a path of least resistance. Right. So I'm going to be like, you know what? It's a little bit cold out. I don't really want ice cream all that bad.
Right.
And so, I'm not going to go get it. So what's going to happen is you're just naturally going to do less of that thing, but you're not going to feel deprived because you're like, I can have it. But you know what? Like I'm being kind of lazy today. I don't want to go get it. Cool. And so how do we make the things like that a little bit harder to obtain? And then how do we make the things that you should be doing more of a little bit easier to obtain, right? So having fruit sitting on your counter, right? Or having stuff prepared in your refrigerator. Like, how can we make the path you want to take in your mind? Like, that's who I want to be. How do we make that the easy path? Because then you're just naturally going to do it more often. Right. So that's a huge piece when we're teaching and talking with our clients is like, how do we create an environment that makes the choice you want to make the easy choice, right? Because if it's hard, it's going to be a new behavior. And so making it hard, you're not going to do it. Like at the end of the day, you can willpower your way through it for a period of time, but then you're going to fall back into old patterns. And so how do you make the thing you want to do the easy thing? And I think, because the podcast is, sleep and recovery, right? It's looking at environment, right? From a sleep standpoint, like the bedroom, like what do you use your bedroom for? A lot of people like work on their laptop while they're sitting in bed.
Right.
Okay. You're starting to create this association between when I sit in this space, I'm going to be working, right? Not necessarily sleeping. And so it's creating environments that are inducive for the thing that you want to happen in that environment.
Yeah, that's huge. It's a great, and it, the thing with that is, we'll blow it off sometimes. I will, because it's so straightforward. It's like, it can't be that impactful, but it is. It's that, just like the consistency of improving that you talked about at the beginning, that gradual, I think about Atomic Habits, that 1%.
Yep, great book. Yep.
And it happens both directions, and it's either or. That's the only time I think it's either or, is either you're progressing towards your goal or away from it. But like, that's such a huge piece to it.
I don't think people realize how influenced we are by our environment, the environment that we're in subconsciously.
Yeah.
Like it is incredible how much just our space around us influences our behaviors, subconscious behaviors, who we become, what direction we're going in. It's crazy. And so like, I've been part of a lot of teams throughout my kind of like sporting career. Most of my teams have been really, really good. I've played on a few bad teams, and it's interesting, like the locker room environments around our elite teams versus our mediocre teams, completely different dynamics on the mindset. And so my high school teams were really, really good. And we were all of it was weird if we lost. Like that was our mindset every time, every game, didn't matter the sport. We had a good group of guys, and that just kind of bred that culture. And that's just the way you start thinking, and you're around that. And when like you cultivate that mindset, you're ultimately going to win more games because you're expecting to win every single game. It's weird when you lose. And then I actually got into coaching. I coached girls basketball for a period of time, for about 3 years. And the first year when I came in, the whole thing we spent that entire year was working on the mindset of winning. Because most of the girls were just kind of like, if we win, great. If we lose, no big deal. Like it's not, and they've been mediocre forever.
Right.
Because of the mindset around like, we're not coming out to win this game. We might be coming out trying to not lose the game, or we're happy if we win, but if we lose, no big deal. And so by the third year, and granted, we had some talent come through as well, we were able to go to the state tournament. And by the time we got that group of girls who had been with us for a couple of years, they finally got around to this idea of like we're here to win the game. We're not here just to kind of run around.
Right.
And that then cultivated through the entire program. And I think like that's just one example of environments. We have lots of different environments that we're part of. And I think if we thought more about engineering environments that helped move us towards success, we would have, it would make success a lot easier rather than having to like quote unquote willpower our way
Yeah.
to success.
Yep.
And so that's just something we talk a lot about with our clients is how do we engineer environments that help move us in the direction we want to go? And what environments are we in or part of that are making it harder for us to make progress?
That's awesome. I mean, and excuse me, the alignment and just noticing those little things and then what to do about it is even like you were saying, you know, set up the bedroom, like tidying up seems like a minuscule thing, and it is in and of itself. But if you've got stuff lying around, to your point on like working in the bedroom or on your bed, you're not going to get into the bed and feel like you're supposed to, which is just relaxed and recover and to try and recover from the work of the day. You're gonna, it's gonna take longer, and it's just gonna gradually compound over time.
And like you said, like we're basically the sum of our daily actions, right? And so when we created Coach Catalyst, we wanted to know what's your daily actions. Because coming back to if you were my client, right? I want to see on a day-to-day basis, are you executing on the things that you wanted to execute on? And if you aren't, cool, that's okay. Like there's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. It is what it is. And if you're not executing, there's something in the process that isn't right. And so that's where a good coach comes in and figures out like, how do we tweak this process or the thing you're doing so that you can have more success here? And so for us at Coach Catalyst, we wanted real-time feedback on our clients. So I want to know when Scott has had 2 days in a row where he struggled. Cool. I'm on the phone with Scott or I'm messaging with Scott and we're figuring out how to find success versus this delay of 14 days, a month, whatever the time is between appointments, where now we're kind of like, we took 1 step forward and then we took 5 back. And now we're kind of working out of a hole each time.
Yeah.
That's the whole premise behind Coach Catalyst, was to give the coach the information they need to coach better, because there's this gap in the process. So we can fill that gap with technology and then scale it. Because now if a coach sees how their clients are doing without having to do all this manual work, now they can coach 50, 100, 200 people. They can create a really cool business. They can be in the industry for a really long time and not flame out in our industry like we see most kind of personal trainers do in the first 6 months. They create an income that makes sense for them to stay here and keep doing the thing that they need to do, and ultimately impact a lot of lives in what they're doing, and provide a great experience for every single person, not just deliver more education, which is what a lot of that's how most people try and scale. It's like, cool, I'll just create this membership site and everyone's going to go watch all my videos. It's like, no, that's actually not how people learn, unless they're like uber motivated, which the majority of people are not.
Right.
And so we need a kind of a different model of education, short, quick, 2 to 5 minute videos, kind of more frequency, instead of just like, hey, here's the textbook from day one. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah. Because if that were the problem, like, half the time, if not more, it's not a knowledge gap.
No.
Like most people, we've talked about it enough that most people know the what.
100%.
It's sometimes getting the how and the why to align better.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where a coach comes into play. A good coach helps someone figure out those other things. There may be aspects to the what the client needs to figure out. But I think the how is a big one. And then that environment plays into that how, execution plays into that how, the why, like, why am I even doing this in the first place? Like, why should I lose 10 pounds? Like getting them to kind of understand the reasoning behind what they're saying they want kind of stuff. Like that's, I think, getting deeper there, because maybe what they actually want is not right. Like maybe they need to go this direction, which is fine. And then I think the ultimate goal of the coach is to help hold them accountable, right? To executing on that, helping them figure out the path and then helping them stay on the path as best as they can. And so we at Coach Catalyst, we've kind of developed this model of coaching that we feel kind of sums up what the coaching process is. The first one is education. So we need to kind of educate the client on what we're doing, why we're going in this direction, what's going on. If we're asking them to eat more protein, they should probably know like what protein is, like how to find it, like how to cook it, what foods have protein in it, what are some good recipes. So we help kind of educate them there. Right.
Mhm.
And the same thing could apply to workouts. Like, what should I do? Should I squat? Should I deadlift? Okay, let's educate them on that. Right. The second one is connection. And so great coaches connect with their clients. And so they connect with them, they communicate with them. And there's this bond that forms between the coach and the client. Like, if you don't form the bond, you're not going to have a client for very long. And then the third thing is accountability. And so the coach, once we've set the path, the coach is there holding them accountable to executing on the things that they want to do. And accountability becomes easier if you have connection, right? If you have connection with someone, they understand that, hey, Trevor's got my best interest in mind. Okay, him coming down on me a little bit because I'm not executing is not necessarily him coming down on me. It's a love for me and where I want to go. And so he understands that, hey, this is what I want to do. And sometimes we need to have those hard conversations. And that's part of a good coach, right? And then also celebrating when they are having success. But that doesn't hit the same if there isn't connection there as well.
Yeah.
And then like our thing at Coach Catalyst was we're building a tech company, right? We're building a software, which is this like weird innate thing, right? And so it's like, how do we utilize this thing? Because this thing isn't going to coach people. We've proven it. Like, we've done side-by-side studies where we took a 6-week program with a coach and a bunch of clients, and then we took a 6-week program that was just a software. And completion of the program with a coach was like 90%. Completion of the program with this software was like 10 to 15.
Wow.
And so like a coach is the difference maker. Like,
Yeah.
it is, because without the coach, it's just like the client just like, oh, okay, now whatever. There's no human. The human aspect is really the difference maker. And so how we think about it is, okay, how do we use this tech to make a coach? We call it a super coach. And so they can connect with their clients better. They can shoot audio messages and video messages. They can create lessons with their face and things on it to create this connection. Because I think when some coaches go online and they've worked in the offline world, is they forget that in the offline world, relationships are built naturally. If a client shows up in front of me for 3 days a week for a year, I don't need to be very good at building relationships. I'm probably going to build a relationship with them because we've just been in the same space, 150 times.
Right.
And so when coaches go online, like, you don't have that built-in connection that just happens because the client has to show up for the appointment. And so I think it's sometimes coaches don't think about. And so you have to engineer it differently. And so that's where we encourage video messaging. We encourage audio messaging. We encourage lessons where you're teaching like this versus them reading it, or having both, because them just watching videos of you is going to naturally build a connection, right? We've all had it where there's people we've learned from, we've watched YouTube videos or seminars or whatever, never met the person in real life, but then we do meet them in real life and we kind of feel like we know them before we even meet them, right? Because we've been watching all their stuff, we've been listening to their audio, all of that kind of stuff. And then if you can tie that in with some synchronous stuff, whether it's like a one-to-one meeting or whether it's group meetings where everything is live, then that really cements the entire process to build a connection in kind of the online world. And so at Coach Catalyst, we kind of think about like, how do we use tech to make this coach incredible, allow them to scale, allow them to create programs that make the client feel like they're your only client. And then ultimately help them make a career out of it. So tech is not necessarily the solution. It can augment. It's kind of like a cyborg, right? Like, when we add tech to humans, now things get really cool. Each and of themselves are going to have their limitations.
Yeah, I really like your model. I mean, I think it's fascinating. I think the nuance and the approach to be able to scale, and that was going to be one of my questions, which you just hit on, which was, how do you bridge that gap from reality to the virtual world? And it seems like a great tool to really be able to do that and fulfill the coach's mission. I don't think any coach went out there to not help people, right? That's right. Most people have that altruistic goal to help people feel better, because we have one life and there's no sense in spending it feeling like crap all the time. But a lot of people, most
coaches do it to a fault. Right? They want to help people so much that they don't charge enough that then they're not in business in the next 12 months because they're doing all this work for not enough return, and they ultimately can't make it work or get burned out or get resentful or all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to balance that. Yeah, I want to help people, but I also need to make sure I'm helping myself so that I can be in this for it's a whole like oxygen mask,
Yep.
thing, right? You put on your own oxygen mask before you help anyone else, right? Because then if you have your own oxygen mask on, you can be here to help more people. But if you're not putting your own oxygen mask on, you're dead. And like, you can't help anybody if you're not, in the game anymore.
100%.
So, yeah, it's coaches really thinking about, how do I make this work so that I can do this in the long term, right?
Yeah. And it's much needed. I mean, with all the numbers out there relative to obesity and health challenges, and I think that was amplified over the last few years. I think a positive bounce though, to some extent. But there's so many people out there that need, want, and crave the help. And I think also, what you're advocating is mentioned earlier was the need for a coach. And I'm becoming more and more a firm believer that everyone needs to get one.
Oh, 100%.
And it's an investment, not a cost. And reframe how you look at that, because it's gonna help you scale your life in your health span.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to improve, you need to find people that have either done it themselves or they've done it with other people, right? You don't see Olympians that just like, hey, fast runner, I'm just going to kind of like do this thing on my own, right? Everyone has coaches. If you want to improve in something, it's probably a good idea to have a coach because they're going to help you improve faster. They're going to be another set of eyes to see like, hey, are you working on the right things? Could we do this a little bit better? They're going to be accountability for when it kind of sucks and you don't really want to do it, to kind of help push through a little bit. And so, but if you don't want to improve, like then like a coach isn't going to solve it, right? So like internally, you need to have a drive to want to improve something, and then a coach just accelerates that, right? But I mean, we see it a lot with clients, right? After a conversation, we actually find out like, hey, maybe they don't actually want to lose weight, right? And so maybe this isn't the right time to do it. And I was just at a conference, and they were talking about some sales training, and it was really interesting. And this guy was talking about being in a conversation with a client that maybe had 20 pounds to lose. And he basically said to the client, you know what, I think the pain of, starting this new thing is greater than the pain that you're in right now. And so you're not necessarily going to change. Or kind of flipped around, the pain of, let me try and think about how I want to say this. But the pain of staying where you're at is less than the pain of starting something new, right? So you're just going to stay where you're at, right? And so he's like, maybe you need to gain 30 pounds. Maybe you need to have to lose 50 pounds before this actually makes sense, right? Because they just aren't in enough pain in order to then take the next step that they need to change their life. And that's I think the case sometimes with a lot of people. So as humans, we need to be honest with ourselves and, okay, do I really want to change? And do I want to improve on this thing? And if I do, great, cool. Coach can make that happen way faster.
Cool. Great insights for whether you're a coach or not. I mean, I think just some of the human behavior elements, I think there's a lot of that, as you may attest to, relative to having two young boys, of parenting skills.
Oh, 100%.
Totally correlates. So to that point, we touched on burnout a little bit, and the unfortunate reality of really in any vertical, but also in the fitness industry. How do you, as a business owner, multi-business owner, young family, put up those boundaries to have that tension, that and applying some of the things we talk about today in your own life?
Yeah. I mean, I think number one is taking care of yourself, right? So if I'm in a good place, my capacity is going to be much greater, much bigger for my team, for my clients, all that kind of stuff. But if I'm not in a good spot from a health standpoint, a recovery standpoint, like I don't have as much to give, right? So I think it kind of starts with yourself. And how do you find ways to, get movement in on a regular basis? How do you, handle your nutrition to a point? How do you try and get some sleep every night? And like, that's going to be determined if you do have kids, like what stage your kids are at, right? Like if you have newborns and that kind of stuff, we just have to understand the suck that you're going to be in for a period of time. But how do you make sure that first and foremost, you're recovered and you're able to play the game at the highest level, right? And then I think the next thing is finding blocks. So I use my calendar, right? So I have my calendar set into certain blocks. So for example, for me, from 5 until 8, those are like kid times. So those are pick the boys up from after school care, and they're typically in bed by 8-ish, give or take, right? And so that is blocked off. No one can book meetings there, nothing. Obviously, there's sometimes some extenuating circumstances, but it's just on my schedule every day. And also on my schedule from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. That's blocked off for kids' time as well, getting kids ready for the day, getting them off to school, all that kind of stuff. So I think blocking your day and being very realistic, like, okay, with these are the things that are important to me. My family is very important to me. Okay, let's block that off. And what times are just for them? Cool. Okay, how much time do I have left? What's the next thing that's important? Okay, my businesses are important to me. Awesome. Okay, what do I need to do for this business versus this business? You know, if it's all me, then figure out what I need to do for my business, or if you have multiple things going on, what team members do I need to meet with here and there to make sure that things are moving forward? And I think it's just blocking those things off. One thing I forgot to mention is like myself too. So like my 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock is blocked off every day because that's workout time. Yeah, there will be times when I take a meeting there because it's really important, but for the most part, it's blocked off and you stick to it. And so now it starts to create constraints for your day, right? You're like, okay, cool. How much time do I have left? And, you know, block off sleeping. I'm going to sleep. I want to sleep for 7 hours or 6 hours or however many hours you feel like you need to be at your best, right? And now constraints force us to be creative. And so, okay, I have this much time to work on my business or be at my job or whatever. Okay, what are the things that I need to do? Because I only have this much time that are going to help take a step forward. And so I think once you give yourself the constraint, then you can start to fill it with the important things. Because like, I don't know whose law it is, but basically the task at hand will expand to the time that you have, right?
Yeah.
So if I have 6 hours to do a project's going to take me 6 hours. If I have 40 minutes to do a project, like it's probably going to get it done in 40 minutes. And so it's then kind of blocking things to be like, okay, I have this for this, this for this, this for this. And then it's understanding your own personality. Like, okay, being rigid like that, does that help me be successful? Or do I need more flex in my day where there's periods of time where I can just do whatever I want or whatever is coming to mind? And so I think when you can marry the constraints with your personality type, you can create a cool system that helps you execute consistently on a day-to-day basis. So and just kind of like the environment thing that we talked about earlier, right? Like the calendar is kind of an environment that dictates kind of where the attention should be at different times. And then like any good scientist, you try something, test, retest. Is it working? Is it not working? How's my life? How's my relationship with my spouse? How's my relationship with my kids? Just kind of auditing every once in a while. And then we shift things if we need to, right? It's always a fluid process. It's never like, here is the best way.
Yeah. Great insights. I really like it. You know, Trevor, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's a lot of awesome lifestyle nuggets in this. Again, and whether you're a fitness professional or the everyday athlete, like most of us. So I really appreciate what you and your partner have done with this, and to really help what some people are calling the frontline support for health is the fitness.
100%. I think so actually, I just had a meeting with my team on Monday, and I was like, what we're trying to do over the next 10 years is we are quote unquote preventative healthcare. Okay.
Sure.
So our clients are going to go to the doctor once a year, maybe, or guys, maybe once every 5 years, right? If we're lucky. Right. And so we get to see our clients 2 and 3 times a week, every single week for the entire year. Like who's going to have a bigger impact on their quote unquote behaviors. Right. And so the gym and the fitness is kind of just like the hook in a way. It's a reason for them to show up in our space on a regular basis, right? But then that gives us the opportunity to have some more of those conversations, build the level of trust and connection. And so as our coaches, we need to be educated in probably a wider set of things. Like we need to understand nutrition. We need to understand stress. We need to understand lifestyle management. We need to understand fitness. We need to understand like corrective exercise and that kind of stuff. Because truly it is like the front lines. If we can make the fitness businesses in every community kind of like our preventative healthcare, that then frees up like our physicians and the people that went down that road to really tackle the stuff that's challenging and tackle the complex problems
Yeah.
and not have to tackle the lifestyle issues that could have been solved if someone maybe moved a little bit more, ate a little bit better, and took care of themselves. Right. I think the whole system gets better and people can then execute on the things that they're really good at. Because I don't know too many doctors that went through, 8 years, 9 years of medical school to be like, oh, great, I just want to talk to clients about losing weight.
Right. Right.
Right. Like that's not why they did it. And so, but that's who they're seeing because that issue then leads to this, to this, to this, to this,
I
or their
cascade.
nutrition is poor. And so they're cascading down another
Mhm.
rabbit hole. And so I think if we can make fitness more accessible, if we can make coaching more accessible, if we can kind of create the front lines in this kind of fitness, call it health coach space, whatever we want to call it, and free up the back end for them to do, when I break my legs snowboarding, I want to be able to like get in quick to a doc and have them fix it because like we're
Right.
really good at that in America.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I mean, so much of the healthcare costs that they're saying, America spends, at least the US, are all lifestyle oriented, largely.
yeah,
I mean, 80% of it, I think, is lifestyle oriented. So you start bending that curve down um, considerably, no matter how
it,
old.
I mean, if you look at maybe look at its environment, right? If we come back to that, like
Mhm.
if let's think about like a work environment. Okay, the majority of our work has moved to intellectual work, right? And we have technologically moved ourselves out of doing stuff, right? And so we went from a very agrarian society where what's fitness, right? My grandpa is 90, I don't know, 94 years old. And like the gym, like we've been trying to get him to come to the gym, but the gym is like a foreign concept to him. He's like, why don't you just go like feed the cows or like, you
Right.
know,
It's a farmer's carry call for
like,
a reason, right? They're
yeah,
like carry
exactly.
dumbbells.
Like work is a part of everyday life and surviving.
Right.
And so now we've moved away from that. Food is available 24/7. We typically have sedentary jobs, and so we're seated at a desk for 4, 5, 8 hours at a time. We get in these beautiful chariots that take us around everywhere that has air conditioning, and like we've gotten rid of a lot of the challenges of everyday life.
Right.
And with that, then our bodies don't necessarily adapt. So we have to be very conscious about creating mini challenges in our life, whether it's going to the gym or maybe going a day without food or fasting or something like that, to help build resilience in our body. And so, yeah, so like it's just the environment that we've engineered as a society is one that will like is ultimately our demise. And so I think when we come back to environment is how do we add in these like little mini challenges? Have you read the book Comfort Crisis by
No, it's on
Michael
my to-do
Eason?
list though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely check that one out. It's really good. It's really good. And it's really just all about how do we create these kind of like mini challenges, these little discomforts that then allow our body to adapt so that we have more longevity. And it's a really entertaining read. He's a really good writer too. So
Cool.
kind of
I'll check
weaves in
that
an
out.
entire story. Yeah, it's a great one. The audiobook is good too.
Well, and that kind of leads me into my next question. I like to close things out with a bit of a hot seat. But so my first one
Let's
is,
do it.
what are you reading right now? And I think you kind of answered that, unless you got something else. But
So I just got Ryan Holiday's new book, Daily, is it The Daily Dad or something like that? Are you familiar with The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday?
yeah, yes, I
Yeah,
get it.
so it's kind of a similar concept where you have a daily kind of little cult devotional, whatever, like thing that you read. And it's awesome. I just got it. I ordered it on a pre-sale and just got it like I don't know, a week
Cool.
ago.
That sounds
But it's
awesome.
it's super cool. I don't know if it's Daily Dad. It's something like that. If you just put in Daily Dad to Google, you'd come up with it. But Ryan Holiday,
Ryan
really
Holiday's
good
good.
author.
Yeah,
Bunch of awesome books.
cool. All right, what are you listening to right now, be it music or podcast?
So I listen to a lot of Luke Combs right now on the radio in the kitchen. I was just I'm gonna pull up on my phone the Audible books that I'm listening to right now if I can get it to pull up. But we do a lot of music in our house, especially in the evening. I've got some kids that have way too much energy. And so playing some music is always a good issue. And I'll see if I can come up with, let me get into my app here that I've been working on a couple books in Audible. I do way more Audible than I do actual books.
Yeah, I I,
Uh,
I can relate.
I'm doing Range right now by David Epstein.
Okay.
It's really about specialization and issues with specialization, and it's looking at like different athletes. And the one at the beginning, he gives like Tiger Woods versus Roger Federer. So Tiger Woods basically specialized in golf from like 3 on, was awesome. And then Roger Federer actually played a ton of different sports, and he didn't really specialize. I think it was until like high school or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at how specialization in different areas of our life, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. And the general concept right now is like people have a higher ceiling if they're kind of generalists and then go deep at a certain period in their life.
Yeah.
So this is kind of close to home for me because I have my one of my boys is 6, the other one is 4. The 6-year-old is going to be an athlete, like hands down, loves every sport. And so me thinking about his athletic development career and like how do we make sure that he has a lot of success if he decides to really pursue something. And so our methodology is like right now he's in everything. Like we're in soccer right now. He's going to do flag football. He's going to do basketball. He's going to do anything that we can do just to try and build that base of just broad skills.
Yep.
And then like as he gets older, once he starts to figure out like his body type and what he might be able to excel at, then we can start to go down that road. But yeah, so Range by David Epstein is a really, really good one that I'm digging right now.
Cool. I've been reading a lot. Stephen Magnus, author of Do Hard Things.
Okay. Yep.
He's been talking a lot about that as well as being more of that generalist. And I think it's probably a totally separate topic of discussion, but like hijacked youth sports,
Yeah.
enforcing like the travel programs for 6-year-olds. And it's just like,
It's crazy. We're starting to get into that. Well, we're starting to get into that world. Granted, I'm in like rural Minnesota, and so we don't have the same influence as like the metro Twin Cities area.
yeah,
And so, but we're starting to get into that of like, how much do we do? Is it too much?
yeah, finding that right tension. And that's a personal family choice, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I think we've definitely like, I don't know what the right answer is, but have overcooked the whole, to your point, the specialization piece on that book. But
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're probably as a family going to adopt for more generalization and then like, hey, so I'm in a small town. So the cool thing about being in a small town is he can play probably football in the fall. He can play basketball in the winter. He can run track, play baseball in the spring.
yep,
And then maybe he can do some like AAU basketball or something throughout the summer. But we're kind of always changing sports. And so we're not playing year round with
yep,
stuff. And because we're not in a huge community where, I mean, high school is going to be like 100 kids in a grade, right? So small, right?
yeah,
We're not dealing with major metro schools where you're dealing with like 1,500 kids in a grade. And so those schools, I've talked to some of my friends that have kids there, and like you basically have to specialize.
yeah,
Like if you want to play on the varsity basketball team, you need
yep,
to be with the right team in 5th grade.
yep,
If you're not in the right team with 5th grade, you're probably not going to make the varsity basketball team because those kids just kind of move through the system together. And it's hard to get into that group unless you're just like exceptional beyond belief. Right.
right.
So we're
Yeah,
fortunate in being more rural area. We have a little more control, but
that what
yeah.
you just described is where I live in
Okay.
Northern Virginia, outside of DC. It's hyper competitive.
Yeah.
I like
And
sign me
like,
up immediately, but
it's so challenging too, because like the majority of these kids, like they got to really love it because they're not going to play at another level. Like it just like the stats are there. Like
yeah,
the like it's single digits of the amount of kids that play high school sports that go on to play at any collegiate level. Right. And so it's kind of like, all right, you just spent the last years, the last 15 years playing baseball. I hope that you really, really love it. And then the other thing too is you didn't get a chance to find out if you maybe would have been better at something else.
right,
Right.
right,
That's something I think about a lot is like, would I have been a good fencer? Or could I have been like Olympic level fencer or like Olympic level something else because the body type, because of how I'm built, because of just physical characteristics. And so quick tangent on physical characteristics. So I have a buddy who works for the Dallas Cowboys. He's a scout for the Cowboys. And he basically has a sheet of every different position. and they look at physical characteristics. So if he goes to LSU and is looking at guys, maybe he's got an offensive lineman. And I don't know if this is the exact number, but he basically says an offensive lineman, I believe it's 42 inches or something like that. They have to be able to reach 42 inches. Their arms have to be 42 inches long or whatever the number is. And if they're not, they get scratched off the board. Because they know that defensive linemen typically have this reach. And if their reach isn't long enough, a defensive lineman's gonna be able to get to their body, move them, and they're not going to be as good. And so there's physical characteristics that are like, he's like, the only way we ever disallow that is if someone is like absolutely exceptional in another category where it doesn't matter about physical characteristics. They're a LeBron James of whatever.
Right.
And so like, it's like, okay, based upon my physical characteristics, could I have been really good at like bobsled? I don't know. They're like, you know, like other things, but if you're not exposed to lots of stuff, like you don't really know. You start pitching at, 8 years old, like, I hope you get really long and don't get Tommy John by the time you're 12.
Right. Sorry, I started that tangent there, but
no, it's all good.
What's your this last one is what's your go-to rest and recovery method?
Go-to rest and recovery method. Like get enough sleep. Like that's probably number one. Just like when I get enough sleep, like we call it sleep a lead domino, right? If you get sleep right, the rest of the things become a lot easier. Like you're in a better mood, you're a better husband, you're a better father, whatever, because like you just got enough sleep. Fortunate for me, I'm an epic sleeper. Just give me a chair or like I can fall asleep. Like it's not hard for me to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Despite having a lot going on, I'm able to kind of like turn things off and like just go to sleep if it's always been the case. I'd take like a 20-minute nap before every basketball game, just go lay in the bleachers and do whatever. But that's a huge one. And then like nutrition is like, I mean, you just taking care of it, but sleep would definitely be number one.
Cool. Well, Trevor, appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Where can folks find you? And I think you have something coming up in August. So I don't know if you want to mention that.
Yeah. So Coach Catalyst HQ on Instagram. That's probably going to take you to every place that we go. And it seems like a lot of people are on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram very sparingly. I just actually got on it. My team finally like twisted my arm enough to be like, you need to do something here. So Trevor Wittwer, just pretty straightforward.
At first I thought it was
there.
a fake account. When I first saw it.
Yeah, because there's barely anything on it, right? So yeah, that's probably the best way. CoachCattles.com website there. So we have an event called the Super Coach Summit coming up in August. I believe it's 5th and 6th. It's a Saturday and Sunday in Reston, so not very far from where you're at, Virginia, right next to the Dulles Airport. And we've been to a lot of events. We sponsor a lot of events. So we've been able to like take bits and pieces from what we like and what we don't like from events. And the events we hate the most are the educational events where it's just like, hey, I go get all these ideas and I write them all down, feel really good about it. And then I go home and I just go back to doing everything I was doing before. And so this event is really based around two things. One is, I'm going to call it tactical, but implementation is probably a better word. We want someone that leaves the event to have a better business than when they came in the event. So that means working on stuff while you're at the event. So we're doing different breakouts and things with the speakers to allow people to be working on their business while they're at the event. And then the second piece of it is networking. So probably the best thing anyone ever gets out of any event is the interactions with other people that are at the event.
Right.
And most of that happens naturally. Most events don't think about how do we facilitate more of that, because most people kind of click up at the beginning of the event because they sit in the same spot. And so they get to know a very small portion. Hopefully they pick the right person to sit next to. And so we're going to do some stuff around networking and facilitating that, even for people that maybe aren't the go out and network and want to meet everybody. They know they should, but that's just not their personality. And so we're going to do a bunch of stuff around there where we really facilitate a community. We really facilitate interactions between attendees, because there's so many cool things that come out of collaborations and different business projects if people just get to know each other. So we're going to be doing a pretty extensive intake on everyone that comes to the event so that we can kind of coordinate their event. Like, hey, you need to meet this person or you need to meet this person.
Cool.
This would make sense just to help people get the most out of it. So yeah, there's going to be the educational the piece of it, and there's speakers and all that kind of stuff, great people, but we're really looking at the things that when you leave an event, you're like, oh, that was awesome. And typically it's around the people that you met and the ideas that you're ready to implement. It's not that inspirational keynote that you heard on day one. Yeah, it's great. It makes us feel good in the moment, but yeah.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I plan on attending, especially being at 30 minutes from my house. So
It's perfect. You don't need a hotel room, right?
that's right.
Cuts
That's
your
right.
costs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, we
Airbnb a couple bedrooms for those attending.
there
So
you go. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's at the Hyatt Regency right in the Reston Town Center. Great hotel, great area, lots of
yes, it is.
restaurants. I think we got the rooms for like 139 a night too. So it's super cheap for people to come in. Dulles is a big airport. You can get there from pretty much anywhere, direct flights. So we feel like it's a nice event for people kind of coming from whenever or
Yeah, that's a
wherever.
great spot. There's some awesome restaurants, some clean eating. There's a
Yeah.
restaurant there called True Food Kitchen.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it, and look forward to connecting live at later this summer.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.